Okay, so this is Jeremy. Met somebody through LinkedIn who's in a similar field that love having their stories. And whatever I can't do, maybe somebody else can. We all have our ways of doing things, our strengths, our weaknesses. And with this, I will give you Stefan. So, who are you?
Well, I don't want to, it's hard, right? Whenever that question gets asked, you don't want to define yourself by your profession. It's a weird thing of who you are. And no, and I understand.
No,
So,
but I go into the background of it too.
right, yeah.
Like what,
Overall, so if we start way back, I'm just a movement lover. I love all sorts of movements, and I've over the many years done a bunch of different training, certifications, you name it. It's always been an interesting thing to me, which obviously, not surprisingly, led to physical therapy. And so I got my doctorate in physical therapy as a result. And I was like, man, this is great. I actually had no idea when I was an undergrad. I didn't even know physical therapy existed. My parents said, hey, we want you to go to grad school, do something. And I said, okay, I have no idea what I'm gonna, I was gonna open up my own gym. I had no idea what I was gonna do. And I found physical therapy. I thought, you get paid to do this? This is amazing. I wanna do this. So I ventured off into that, graduated, started actually working as a physical therapist. And after a few years, I kind of went, there's something wrong here, in the sense of we do a lot in this country what's kind of reactive therapy and reactive medicine. And at the same time, everybody tells you that proactive kind of interventions are the best. It's all about proactive. And I go, well, why is the majority of what we do reactive? And I get it. There's a lot to be said. We're probably going to talk a bit about human nature, because it's even the thing of when you hurt, you don't go, I'm going to go to the doctor. You go, is it enough for me to go to the doctor? Am I hurting? Maybe I'm not, it's not that bad. It'll get better in a week. And so you wait and you wait. And so I thought, okay, we need to start doing an intervention somewhere before that. And I decided that office workers, especially now with the pandemic and everything, that's the big kind of demographic, especially people that are doing work from home. Your home work office is not set up well. Most of the time, you don't have all the fancy equipment that a corporation might buy for their office and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not expecting you to have to buy all those things. So I tried to take all that physical therapy experience and try to bring it in for people to use to make them live longer and just healthier lives. So that is the winding question of who I am.
okay, so what exactly, again, free-spirited,
Yeah.
So, what do you do?
Sure. So what I do primarily, I guess you would call it education, but really it's consulting individuals and companies on how to change your work environment. So right now it's all done virtually so that I could have access to really anybody. And especially like we said, work from home. I'm not going to go into your home. That would be very difficult with the pandemic and everything, but virtually makes it very accessible to anybody that might need that service. The dream and the goal eventually, however, isn't just this kind of consulting, but is to change our kind of work culture so that as part of American work culture, we allow movement and it's not seen as, oh, they have to get up because, they have a bad back and they need to move. It's like, no, like everybody should get up so you don't end up with a bad back and whatever it might be. So primarily right now it's one-on-one sessions of consulting and then also just presentations to the general groups of how do you set up your work environment? Yes, your desk might be set up well, but what about the rest of the room? How is that set up? And just what is good posture? What have you not considered about moving and various little exercises from the physical therapy standpoint?
Why do you do it?
Honestly, I do it partially as we talked because we need it. I see that we have in the last century progressed incredibly from the sense of technology. It is It is mind-blowing how much our species has leapt forward. However, speaking of our species, from our physiological standpoint, we haven't really changed over the last century. We're about the same, but all the things that we're doing are so vastly different. And I think that we're lagging behind this, and we're letting technology take over too much, to where it's harming our physiology and it's harming our health as a result. So it's my why is to try to help us be healthier. And I'm not saying get rid of technology by any means. It's definitely here to stay, as we do this on a Zoom call, obviously.
Yeah.
But we need to understand how, from a physical standpoint, we need to live better with it. We're already dealing with all of the mental aspects and the emotional aspects of social media, and how that's greatly impacting everybody. I think we're not addressing the physical quite as much lately.
Yeah, you said something about being reactive and proactive, and had a realization recently. Like, there are things that I've learned through my own experiences, and sometimes I forget them, and then it gets reignited at some point. But being proactive, and had another realization 2 months ago. That doctors are the last resort, not my knee hurts, let me go get some painkillers. It's obvious, like, this is something seriously wrong, like, yeah, maybe you need surgery. That is, yes. But I can tell you from my own experience that, and I'm pretty open with this on my YouTube and Zoom and Facebook and everything else, is that my life changed drastically. I was high 200 pounds, not quite 300, but pushing it, and how all but two of my problems went away with losing weight. And now, and something that I learned in studying nutrition is, I'm not going to say the way the teacher said it. He said it very offensively, and I laughed because it's true. But he said basically, at least with the nutrition, that say you're taking 100% of vitamin C, whatever it is, that's the minimum. That is 100% will keep you where you are. But most of us are deficient in some, maybe and whatever it is, North people. I lived in New York, where there's not as much sun as there is where I live now in Florida, and like vitamin D. So in New York, might have to supplement with vitamin D. The only way to progress is to get more than 100%, and to keep our life on track and not need the doctor to begin with. That's the trick.
It's a good point. All of them are good points. Even in physical therapy, in your response to the surgery, for example, sure, there are absolutely times when surgery is the necessary. Yes, true. But a lot of times people come in, they're like, it's hurting. Do I need to get surgery? No, there's so much you can do before surgery. Don't run and get surgery right away. Of course, if you go to a surgeon, they're going to figure out the best way to help you, and what they do is surgery. So they're going to try to give you surgery. Granted, I've worked with some good surgeons that go, don't get surgery, go do something else, go do physical therapy, or maybe they just say, hey, you got arthritis in the knees, lose some weight. That's definitely going to help you with that. And like you said, your weight loss has tremendously helped you with so many things. So yeah, that's awesome.
But and I'm pretty open with this, but on on my YouTubes and whatever and Facebook, that went through health, was making a lot of bad decisions, and doctor said I was 28 years old, and he says, yeah, when I was in the high 200s, because you're not going to live to see 30. And that's when that was bang, out of change, and it hit. We had a long conversation, and 4 years later, at 32, I go back to the same doctor, and he goes, no, something's not right, and this is one of the two things that didn't leave. something sounds wrong in your chest, something's not right, go see a cardiologist and second opinions. Got three or four opinions, and they said the only reason I lived through that heart surgery at 32 was because I had lost so much weight. It was the only reason I lived. So, and having to take care of my health, it's again proactive. You hit the nail right in the head. So, and I believe in this stuff, and I'm not a physical therapist. I believe in the nutrition side of things. It changed my life. But you're 100% right. That it's the last resort. Um, so I guess when is I would think also, like, how do you do it? Do you work online?
Right. Yep. Everything. I do everything online. Eventually, will there be a time that I foresee going to a corporation's headquarters and just saying, "Hey, what is your layout like?" Eventually, but right now, everything is done online, realistically. And as far as when, all the time. I constantly think about this stuff.
What are your work hours now since you're doing it from home?
Oh, it varies because anywhere from starting at 7 or 8 in the morning to 9 at night. It just depends because sometimes people want to have that discussion or that talk after they get home from work or after they log off of the computer, depending on if they're going back right now or not. And it honestly just varies. I've definitely had sessions where I talk to people on the weekend because that's the only time that they can talk. Most of the time, it's right around lunchtime. That's when people have the most presentations because that's when companies are like, "Oh, okay, you can all sit down and watch this presentation." But I was going to ask you something actually. You made a really, really interesting point of it's great to hear that story of you were 28. They told you weren't going to live to 30. Boom. That's the initial spark. That's the big ignition of this motivation. And I find that can be an easier thing of that initial. I'm wondering what helped you maintain that for the 4 years. Was it referring back to that, or was there something else that just kept you going and motivated and driving you?
I found something I love.
Mm-hmm.
Loved it. When I was in my first run at college, I was a psychology major. I suffered from severe depression. Like I had to be put on antidepressants on my own site. I'm pretty open with that. And so I was trying to figure myself out. I always was different. I felt different. Society is here, and I was always somewhere. And I knew I was somehow different. And I was really what it was, but I was trying to figure myself out. The secondary thing was the major, study and getting a job. That was really secondary. And my parents told me the whole time. They said, "We know you're never going to go to grad school. Like, you have to do something like think of it as a job instead of like just figuring you have your whole life to figure it, and you're not going to get it all in one shot." And I had been looking for direction. In my senior year of college, I worked at an Outback Steakhouse, and it was a great place to work. I loved it. I still remember it was 2001, and loved it. And my mother told me, she says, "I think that was what you were supposed to do." And they had told me you're supposed to do this, you're supposed to do that. Of course, I knew better. Didn't listen to them. But then when I did the Outback. I was supposed to start at one of the exchanges in downtown Manhattan. I was scheduled to come home the weekend of, it would have been like the 16th of September, 2001. And my mother had said, no, I'm sorry, not my mother. My father, his friend was the senior vice president of one of the exchanges, and they set up they said, "Yeah, just come work for me." And for obvious reasons, I couldn't get through Manhattan at that time. I was scheduled to start across the street from the Trade Center. It would have been Monday, September 17th, 2001 was my scheduled first day. So
Wow.
for obvious reasons, I just left the job. I told him, yeah, I'm gonna go back home, and I said, I can't get to New York City right now, so I'm stuck. Do you want? Is that a problem? They said, yeah, sure, stay. Don't worry. And I wound up because I couldn't start in Manhattan right away. Um, I took a job at a TGI Fridays nearby, and like, and I never admit to my mother. I'm like, I think that was it. And, she was right, and I didn't admit that to her for so long. And then 7 years later is 2008 with my health and my doctor. He sent me to a dietitian. I didn't even know what that was. I'd never heard of him. What the, what is that? I've never heard of that before. And I went, and by the time I saw the dietitian, I was like 240, something like 230s maybe. I think it was in the 230s. And by the time I was done with the dietitian, and it was less than a year, it was like 7 or 8 months, I was 144 pounds.
Wow.
And like, oh my God, like it blew my mind. And then getting sober came in, and it came up at that, um, and they kind of, there was some, and it's, but how everything went away, except for two things, the heart problem being one of them. We don't know if that was genetic. We don't know if it was the partying, but it didn't go away. And with that comment, the only reason I lived was because of losing all that weight. And again, having that realization that you said about being proactive, totally that was 2008. Now at the beginning of 2000, I don't know what year it is, 2021. And I still believe in it as much now as I did then. And you are 100% correct. That's a good way to put it. And I put things on LinkedIn and Facebook about the doctors being the last resort. How all the problems can go away. And I remember telling my mother this was a couple of years ago, but we were talking about something with her eating. And I remember, and I learned it in school, and I repeated it to my mother. I said, if man made it, you can't eat it. Fruits, vegetables, this, that, no artificial preservatives. And I've been learning in school, they showed us a video. It was the Bionic Burger. A guy he did he did his own little study, nothing official. He just wanted to see what would happen. A layperson. He bought 2 cheeseburgers from McDonald's or Burger King, whatever it was. I think it was McDonald's. And he found it. He had ordered 2, he ate 1, and he left 1 in his pocket and forgot about it. And a year later, he went to put that jacket on, and the burger was in the pocket. And it still looked like brand new, like it just came off the grill.
Oh, okay.
But that's how many artificial preservatives were in that burger. So if it's, and I'm saying it a little more bluntly than the teacher did, but if it's so bad that the crap we eat knows not to eat it, yeah, that's pretty bad. Even the crap we won't eat knows not to eat that crap. So, yeah, like natural, and you're 100% right. But okay, I probably went on a little too long. I said pretty free flow.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I love nutrition. It's definitely a second passion of mine. If I had the time to go and get a full-on degree in it, I think I would. But I feel like at this point, I just don't have necessarily that time. But it's definitely the second passion after movement is nutrition, because like you've kind of mentioned on it, they go hand in hand so much. Um, it's always really funny how you can just ask a kid, and even just a kid will know. Like any child, you're like, so if you're overweight, what do you do? They're like, eat your vegetables and move more. Like any kid will just say that. And you're like, well, if it's that simple,
Yep.
why can't we follow it?
So we
So,
kind of touched on it through the conversation. Why do you do what you do?
so realistically, it's to change, and just the easy answer that everybody hears, right, is to help people. But it's more than that. It's to help humanity. Um, because right now I have to be realistic. I'm one person. I can only help a handful of people. But the hope is that this spreads further and further and further. And just as an idea, helps make sure that we don't further fall into the, I don't know if this will be a good reference, into the Wall-E kind of people that were always just riding around on whatever scooters or anything like that, and that we just get completely devoid of all of our human capabilities. So it's really my big why is just to help humanity in that sense. But I completely understand there is no way I can do that alone. But you got to start somewhere.
Yeah. How do you go about what you do? How do you do like now? Like, and I don't know if I asked this before, is doing it online. I would think that being a physical therapist, you have to have an office. So how do you go about it?
Right. And so in order for, because I made it virtual and so that I can be accessible to anybody, I made sure that essentially what I'm providing is at no point, it's never labeled as a physical therapy service. That way I don't need to have a license in any other state. So that takes away any kind of need for me to do any kind of hands-on therapy, because then that would be classified as physical therapy, and that's a whole other kind of slew of issues there. So this way I can provide videos that I can pre-film, or on camera we can go through the various exercises that might be needed. But I will say that exercises are just such a small portion, because people don't do their exercises. As a physical therapist, I know they don't do their exercises. Um, I went to physical therapy, and I'll be honest, I didn't really do my exercises. I probably did them more than most other patients, but I didn't do them as much as the therapist asked me to do it. And that's human nature. That's nothing. It's not like I dislike the therapist or anything like that. It's the reality. We're very, very busy, and if you tell us to do more, it's hard for us to hear that we need to do more and more and more. So what I'm trying to get into now is, don't think more, think less, because we tend to think we need to exercise more, we need to move more. How about we try to shift it and think sit less? It's still technically the same thing. I'm still asking you to get up, but view it in a different way. I'm asking you just to do something a little bit less and kind of progress from there. So since it becomes more of this educational mindset motivation, which is part of the reason I asked you, because it was so interesting to hear what your motivations were. Granted, of course, not everybody's going to have such strong motivating factors, but it's more about presenting those to people and saying, let's change your habits, because your habits are what's going to help you with your longevity and the long-term effects of this. Because the exercise, yeah, you're going to do it for 2-3 weeks, and then you're going to forget about it. It's only just like a fraction of a single percent that continue with their exercises indefinitely, as far as physical therapy exercises. Some people really do a good job about just general, walking, whatever it might be. So the how is really just this virtual presence to be able to do more so education than the hands-on treatment and just exercises. Are there a couple exercises thrown in? You betcha. I can't live without them.
You're reminding me of something I learned 2 years ago. It was March 2 years ago. I'd taken a job when I was up in New York. Weird how it turned out, but I wound up working at a gym, and as a personal trainer, and they taught us something. Like, I'm not the best salesman, and that personal training is a sales job, and it sticks with me to this day. They taught something so important, and you just touched on it. Is they say mask, motivation, accountability, structure, and knowledge. This is part of like how you don't say that to the person coming into the gym,
Mm-hmm.
but that's how you guide a session or guide somebody into saying, yes, I'll buy session. And I know this with myself, and my mother and I would go back and forth a little bit about it. In the second half of last year, she's worried about COVID, and she's worried about it more than I do, but she worries a little too much. And that's another thing we go back and forth. And she's gonna watch this video, and she's gonna call, but it's like, why did you do that? Hi, Mom. But, and I told her God's honest truth. This works with me, and it works with people getting into the gym. And they say, like, why do you need a trainer? And she wanted to buy a treadmill for me for my home. And she doesn't live very far away since I moved to Florida. But and I said, Mom, the biggest problem is that I will never do it because you go to the gym every day. I said, yeah, I'm at the gym. The hardest part, and this is what I tell the clients, it's not BS like it was a little bit in selling training, but it's the truth, is the hardest part of going to the gym is going to the gym, is getting in the car. That's the hardest part. Once you're there are times I'm just like, oh, and I curse at myself. I don't want to be here. I don't want to do this. And but once I'm there, it's another story. And I do, and I was on the treadmill today, and I'm watching the TV to distract my thinking, and I'm just like, oh my God, get me off this thing. But I know at the end, every single day I do the treadmill, and every single day I'm like, oh, thank God I did that. Thank God. And it shows because I don't know if this would apply to from a physical therapy standpoint, but when I lost all that weight years ago, 2008, they said you have diabetes, and my weight, and now, but it's like, and I still struggle with my weight. I've lost 30 something pounds in the last 3 months, like, and that's part of the accountability. Is can you measure results in any way?
For what I necessarily do,
Yeah.
I'm actually finishing up right now a little mini study that I'm running, of where I'm doing a questionnaire of general, what does your work provide? How much knowledge do you have about movement and everything like that? And it of course involves productivity, because productivity is the big thing that everybody looks at in corporate America. Is, does this improve our productivity? And so that's one of the ways that I measure it, is if we're able to have people take less sick days throughout the year, and in general just be more focused, because exercise, with all the endorphins and everything, actually improves your brain function. So it's definitely a good thing to say that if we move more, we're going to be able to work better. So sure, it's a little bit harder to maybe quantify it and say it's going to be 57% or 5%, whatever it might be. But I think that the way that I'm doing it is, hopefully it will show that, hey, over these 2 weeks, it's just a quick 2-week study saying over 2 weeks of us having this intervention with them, this is how many points they improved from a self-reported questionnaire. So I'm almost able to measure it. We're almost
Yeah, no, I'm like, I don't know, that's a good question in physical therapy, but like, and I know from my side, get on the scale. Like,
there you go. Yeah.
but and I know, like, I just went to the doctor because I had a heart surgery in 2012, and I went to the doctor it was December 1st. It was my birthday. I had seen the cardiologist for the first time in Florida. Then 2 weeks later, I saw the regular doctor, and like, oh, we got your with the cholesterol and 100. I'm like, what the hell? How does that happen? That's like less than zero. I'll take it. Believe me, I'll take it.
Right.
Oh, good, good. I'll take it. I'm running around with Ma. You wouldn't believe what my cholesterol is. Yeah. But yeah, it's you can like. But the thing is, with in my case, the scale. Get on the scale, and part of that accountability, like having to answer to somebody. So, and I know and with myself, like I can't answer to myself, and I have no other people who tell me the same thing. Oh, Jeremy, no, no. But I know that works with physical therapy, like to say how, you know, doing it have an appointment every week or however often it is.
Right. And it's definitely, it is measurable, but it's also going to be different, slightly different for different people. Because similar to what you're saying, if where you started in 2008, right, at that weight, if you were using the scale as your measurement, there was so much more progress that you could do versus if we were to say your starting line is where you are right now, right? We wouldn't expect as many pounds. Obviously, that makes sense. You've already achieved so much and lost so much. So for different people, it's going to be a little different, but it's still, you're right. Metric is still definitely important. What was the S? Is it motivation for mask, motivation, accountability? What was the S?
Structure. Yeah,
Structure.
that's a good way. That's a good thing. Like I said, we're free. You know, I got apparently you kind of free flow. Yeah, like that's a good point. Like, how do you go? How would you go about something like that?
Which part?
Structure. How do you go about a session? No, yes, it depends on the person, but
oh, sure. Realistically, I've kind of broken it down into three areas for now because it's the simplest thing. So the structure goes with, we've got sort of the ergonomics side of things of what is your setup like? What does your, because that's going to be the easiest thing for you to change and not have to worry about, because as soon as you change it, it's the physical environment, it stays. So if your computer's too low, you put it on a set of books, it stays there. It's not something you need to constantly be changing. The next portion that I usually like to give people is the exercise portion, because I know they're not going to do it. So, but I want to bring it to their awareness so that if during that portion they find an exercise that they go, whoa, why can't I do this? This should be, or they go, wow, this makes my back feel that much better. Maybe I've given them a little something for them to consider. And they're not so burnt out that this is their last session or something, and it's a lot easier. And the final part is the habits. So this is where we start going, okay, let's build the habits. This is the hardest part, but this is where you get the biggest bang for your buck of how do we work in these habits so that you can do it. And everybody's going to be different. Some people, I had one girl, she loved drinking water. She says, as soon as my water bottle is empty, I'm going to get up and refill it. I'm like, okay, from now on, fill your water bottle a quarter of the way. That way you have to get up more often to go get it. Because if that's your little trigger, great, there you go. Is everybody like that? No, not at all. but that was just a quick example of it. And so then we kind of, that's the very basic part. After that, it all becomes customizable to everybody has their own different little bits. And so, but that gives them the structure of, okay, I've set up my space. I know how I can get my body ready to move. And then I know what kind of habits I need to maintain movement in my life.
yeah, I'm thinking another question out of this is knowledge. Okay. It's your knowledge. What did you study in school? What were your studies?
So in undergrad, I got a bachelor's of science in kinesiology, effectively exercise science, which was the reason for opening the gym, or thinking of opening the gym. And then when thinking about grad school, going, what am I doing with this degree? Is there anything? And then finding physical therapy. And so getting my doctorate in physical therapy. That was just a fantastic process of all that. There's so much knowledge, and it's a full-time job, grad school. It's literally classes were actually started at 8 or 9 a.m. all the way until 5 p.m. It was with an hour break for lunch. Other than that, it was, you were in class as a full-time job. I was impressed. Some people actually held down a job on top of that, which I don't know. I don't know how they did that, but power to them. They're wonderful people. But to mention knowledge, it's actually one of my slides. I have a quote that I stole from somebody else that I can't think of the name off the top of my head, but it's about knowledge. And it's the knowledge without action is useless and irrelevant.
Yeah.
And it's true, and it's part of what you're kind of saying about the whole mask thing. If you only have the K of like the knowledge, everybody knows they need to move more. Everybody knows that sitting too long and not drinking enough water or whatever it may be is not good for them. They don't do anything about it. But that doesn't really help you if you don't do anything about it. So
Faith without works is dead. That's what it is.
yeah,
Comes from yeah. I don't know if it's worded like that. It's the Bible. But yeah. I was gonna ask something else too, and now I forgot what it was. I don't know. Anything else?
it happens.
I do.
We
Oh, it happens all the time. I'm like,
right.
and I discussed this with my family, and they like when I'm with like my mother in the car, like I got a satellite radio for Howard Stern. I got it. My stepfather bought it for me at the end of my birthday is in December, and Howard Stern was going on January, and so I got it for me for my birthday, and I lost my train of thought. Oh, but we got, and my mother now has a satellite radio in her car, and the kind of comes with all the cars now, and I could just say like, boom, this, and is with 90s stuff. It's not maybe because that's when I grew up with the 2000s. I wasn't paying attention as much, but I can go. Oh, this song came out on January 17th, 1992, and we'll look it up. When did it come out? January 17th, 1992. My sister.
Wow.
I'm like, and they're like, but I'm like, where are my sunglasses right now? They're like, you do know you're wearing them, right? I'm like, oh, shit. Like, oh shit, I didn't even realize that. Happens all the time. I'm like, where are my keys? Like, they're in your hand.
You're right. It's very interesting about knowledge that way of and I definitely find that it's interesting you say that. So there are many things that I learned in PT school because you have to cover such a vast just array of knowledge in there. So for example, we also obviously learned pediatrics and about kids. I haven't been able to work with kids a whole lot. I've had a couple of patients, but not that many. And sometimes somebody will ask me, I'll go like, I do not remember it. But slowly they start talking about it. I'm like, wait, I remember this random part. They're like, yep, that's exactly it. But same thing, sunglasses, keys, nope.
Yeah.
I leave them at home frequently.
Like, yeah, you're wearing your sunglasses and your keys. I'm like, oh, can't help but laugh about it. Yeah, but like that's tough, and correct. God, I didn't know that about grad school. Good for you. Yeah, it's like, did you have to take with kinesiology as your major? Did you have to take anatomy and physiology?
I did. I was actually, we had some wild, our teachers, our professors for both anatomy and physiology 1 and 2, they were just characters. They were very interesting. They were both women, and their fashion was just incredible. You never saw them wear the same outfit twice. One of them was a drummer in a punk rock band. And she always wore like 6-inch stilettos, always different. Oh, I was like, how do you, okay, that's fine. But it was very interesting. I definitely, during the first one, during anatomy physiology 1, I didn't care. I was just kind of like, all right, this is fine. By the time the second one rolled around, I understood, okay, this is going to be very important to me and what I'm going to be looking into. So I really definitely focused in a whole lot more there. And I think I just, as a result, had a better experience from it. In grad school, in PT school, we actually got to go and have cadaver lab. So where we actually had a cadaver and we got to dissect and look at all of that. And yeah, it's not, in no way am I going to say it was a pleasant experience. It's a very strange experience. And obviously very grateful to the donor, as they are called, because you definitely learn a lot. Because we see these pictures and these diagrams online, and we look at ourselves and we think we know what the body looks like inside. It is so much different, and I usually like to think that our body looks a lot smaller and a lot more fragile than what we think it actually does. So It's very interesting.
I remember when I went to take the first anatomy and physiology, I'm like, oh,
Hmm.
I want to see it all. I show me the inside of a kid. I want to look and I want to know what it smells like. And I'm like, oh my God. Oh my God. But oh my God, I used to call my mother crying all the time. But I remember learning, I'm like, I can't do it. It's so hard. But um, but having to know, at least from the nutrition standpoint, I remember learning in the immune system section module, whatever you want to call it,
Hmm.
about the no one else would know it, the eosinophils and the nutrient. It boggled my mind, and having to know, like, because at first I'm like, I don't need to know what an eosinophil is. Like, I don't want to do this, and anyone who doesn't know, and I couldn't describe it either, and it's like immune response and allergies, but why we need fats, carbs, proteins, this, that, And I remember with learning how to cook, and I got so scared of learning how to cook. And I'm like, my job isn't to know how to cook. I got to tell you fat people how to cook. And that was my thought. But
Hmm.
then learning it was, oh my God, there is so much more to to it. And that goes for anatomy and organic chemistry and all that stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, like there is so much more that I didn't know I had to know. And so I know, and I see people, and you just described something I didn't know about being in grad school 8 hours a day and a day break. You are very well trained. And I mean you specifically too, not just a
Yeah.
physical trainer, I mean physical therapist.
There was a definite difference. So when you're first year in physical therapy school, um, almost every single question you ask, the professor will say, it depends. And you get very frustrated with that answer because you go, just tell me the answer. It's simple. I'm asking you a very simple question. Just say the answer. By the time that you're graduating and first years ask you those questions you used to ask, you look at them and you go, you're going to hate this, but it depends. And you now understand how many little pieces there are, and that the question is not as simple as we may think it is until we finally get all those pieces of knowledge together and we say, there's so many more moving parts that we can't answer that. So
Well,
I,
yeah,
I know that well.
it's weird you mentioned that, and the moving parts. You would know it a lot better than I do. Obviously, I'm not a physical therapist, but learning, like I only have like an introductory knowledge of like the planes of motion,
Mm-hmm.
and remember having to learn that. And thank God I took that personal trainer class before having taken anatomy and physiology, because when I first took that personal trainer class, it was 2009, and they were trying to describe the sagittal plane and frontal plane, and I just couldn't wrap my head around it. And somebody, I don't remember who, had said, remember this: frontal plane is front and back, sagittal plane is sides. So remember the S and side, front and frontal, like
Mm-hmm.
that. And then transverse was not that there was much else, but everything else.
Right.
So do you have to carry that out in what you do?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, I put up a video. It's actually, I guess, my first YouTube video because I decided to start a YouTube channel. Since everything is virtual, it only makes sense to also create videos, obviously.
Yep.
And I actually talk about the planes and I talk about how important it is because we tend to only do things really in the sagittal. We primarily like doing, and for other people that will be looking at this, it's kind of like if you were to bend forward and backward, that's when we're talking about sagittal, we're talking about bending forwards and backwards. It's that kind of a thing. And it's the question of, okay, can you move in other ways? And and I talk about that. And yes, it's there because we don't do it enough. And most of the stuff that we do is like right in front of us. We don't really do a lot of things side to side, and we almost never do turns. And when you hear people doing turns, they go, you know, I was doing some spring cleaning, I was lifting something up, and I turned, and I'm like, I can finish that for you. Your back went out. And they're like, yep. So,
oh, that's good to know about what you do. When I was working with somebody right before I moved down to Florida. I had a client
mhm.
at a gym and talked about ab exercises. And it's something I I don't know if this would apply to you as well. It's working with others and having clients help make me a better trainer because there was somebody, I just go, no, I just want abs, I just want abs. And, it's got to be best for the person. And, in this case, and I sat and I said, before I say, no, okay, we'll do only abs, give me a day to think about it. We'll work on abs the first day and come back with a better, see if there's something else. But it turns out abs were best for her. And I'm like, look at that. She didn't know any better, but I'm trying to look at it from that standpoint of what that, with this, and she had any injuries now, I don't remember. But it taught me because as a trainer, which I know is not nearly as in depth as a therapist, but to be a better trainer. And it was, I'm learning and kept I don't know if I still have it. I don't know if it made the move down to Florida from New York. Exercises. Okay. And I think another trainer might have suggested it too. Have a notebook, have a list of for every muscle group there is biceps, triceps, and are you able to do something like that? Do you have?
Do you mean to write down a book like that and have a reference?
Yeah.
I am able to, but honestly, I've had to do it so much that at this point, most of it is right here.
And that's actually a better answer, believe it or not.
Yeah, and the fun part, and this is to me, when I say I love movement, I truly do. I am constantly on YouTube or Instagram, and I'm like, what are people doing as far as interesting exercises? Is there something weird? And if people just ask me of, hey, I need an exercise for blank, I can give them a couple of, here's just your normal exercises that are going to be easy for you to do. And then I can say, if you want a completely creative one, I take all the knowledge that I have and kind of create a completely different exercise because I love being creative in that sense. So I can give you an example. We tend to, so for example, if somebody wants to work their biceps or their lats, right? People will do, okay, you do a lat pull down, you do some pull-ups, you do some rows. Those are your usual kinds of things. Now, something somebody may not think about as much is if you do a squat while with your arms holding onto a door frame as you're sitting down, you're pulling towards you. You're kind of doing a pull or a row. It's a very different kind of a thing. So if you were to do a squat while holding on, you're still activating those muscles. Is it the primary one? No, but now you're practicing pulling with a squat. And that's a whole extra amount of stuff that you might be doing. But that's not something you'll probably see on your normal bodybuilding.com or any of those kind of databases of exercises.
And I remember learning as the first personal trainer job I had was in 2009. And the first client I had, and I still remember this to this day, it was a guy I knew, kind of not knew him, but I'd seen him. He was at the gym every day on a shift I was working, and we'd sit in BS at the front desk, or he'd come into the trainer's office, and we got along very well. And I got comfortable with him, and this was the very first personal training session I did. And he said, this is going 11 years ago, 12 years ago, whatever it is. And when we're done, he goes, can I give you some feedback? I'm like, all right, so it's not going to be good, but this is a guy I'm comfortable with. Just take it. Maybe he'll tell me something. And he said, you did the exercises that you wanted to do. You gave me a workout you would do. You didn't give me the workout that was best for me. And obviously, I still remember that. And I know now from experience and having that book, and I did use bodybuilder.com. I did use it for a bunch of exercises to list as things to do. But it's to have the person do things they wouldn't normally do. Otherwise, they wouldn't need a trainer. And that helped me become better to have all those ab exercises for that lady you just told me about. So, and having to go through physical therapy after having heart surgery, to do those things. And it's beneficial. I know what you do is so beneficial. And I will say, I don't remember what year it was, but 2017, 2018, something like that. My foot was hurting. And it was getting worse and worse. And I know it wasn't broken, nothing like that. And I had a doctor appointment, regular checkup at the doctor, and he said my foot is killing me. And I described it. I said it's right in the middle. Imagine somebody took a knife and just sliced from left to right, and it hurts so much. He goes, you have plantar fasciitis. And the strange thing is, and he said, change your shoes and get the insoles. And he said, I'm like, I haven't been able to go to the gym. It just hurts. I can't walk. And he says, I'm going to tell you something. And this is, and I know he's not a physical therapist, but he goes, walk on it. Go on a treadmill. I'm like, you're kidding. I can't walk from my bedroom to the bathroom. Because I'm telling you, walk to the bathroom and then walk back and start there. And little tips like that I normally wouldn't think of. And it worked. They gave a cortisol shot, or so I think it was cortisol. Don't hold me to that. And I had to go for a couple of them. But it worked. Being active and staying on it, as long as I wasn't standing in one spot. But tricks like that, they help. It definitely helps. Have those tricks.
For the longest time, wanted to, and it's still kind of jumping around in my head. I wanted to write a short book called PT Hacks. And it's stuff like that. It's these little things that, as a physical therapist, you pick up these little things of, hey, here, this might help you with posture. Or, hey, here's another little thing that you can do. One, for example, for plantar fasciitis that people really like to do is take a water bottle, fill it 2/3 or so, put it in the fridge, and then you have something you can roll your foot out that is also an ice massager, kind of a thing. But it's simple things like that where it doesn't cost you really much of anything, but it's a simple, easy trick to maybe help out a little bit. So, but I definitely know those are always really fun. It's always nice to have those in your back pocket.
Yeah, they told me about that too with the water bottle. Somebody mentioned it. I was going to ask something else again. Did you say where you went to school?
I went to school. So undergrad was University of Maryland. So I live in Nashville, Tennessee. Slight story time. Before I went to undergrad, before I even knew about kinesiology necessarily, I was playing upright bass and I was playing classical music. And I said, this is what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. And I want to go play in orchestras. So I auditioned, I got into Vanderbilt and I got into the University of Maryland. And my mom said, well, if you go to Vanderbilt, you can live at home. So I went to the University of Maryland as a result. And so that's where I started off with music, and then I realized I don't need a degree in this. If I really want to continue doing music, you don't need a degree. You just have to play well. That's all that matters. If you want to teach, you need a degree, but that's about it. So that's where I switched into kinesiology, and all those other things kind of happened. And then after that, I ended up checking out a lot of different grad schools, and I found one that was Arcadia University. It's within the top 10. It wasn't number one. I went to the number one school. That's USC at that time. I think it's still the number one school for physical therapy out in California. And I did a tour. I talked to people there. I was there with my brother who's getting his PhD. He loved it. I felt like it was very cold, and the environment just wasn't warm in the sense of how a physical therapist I felt should be. It was very kind of cold, calculated feeling, and nothing against them. That was just my experience of when I was there. So I went to this school called Arcadia University because they just felt like a family. And I thought of all the professions in healthcare, a physical therapist, amongst some others, really needs to feel that way because we're seeing patients many, many times. We're not seeing them at their best. They're in pain. Things are unfortunate. And so that made kind of that decision for me. So I went to Arcadia University up in Pennsylvania for grad school, and University of Maryland in College Park for undergrad.
But you're a lot smarter than I am. But I remember, and I would look for this now, at least to be at a gym, to work at a gym again if I were looking, is the first gym that I worked at. I worked at two. I worked at a New York sports clubs for a little over 2 years. And then I worked at a Blink. It's called Blink. I don't know. I don't think they're all over the country. I know they're in the Northeast. And it's part of Equinox.
Mm-hmm.
And having the environment and the New York sports clubs, they're all over the place. I know they go by other names in other areas, like it's under a bigger company. But they had I don't know if it was Pennsylvania or Philadelphia Sports Club, Washington Sports Club, but there are other gyms, like I know they have gyms down here, the same parent company down in Florida. The environment of the gym I do find helps. To have that, like when I worked there, for the most part, there were some, and I'm going to get some correction from my mother on this, but overall, I loved it. I loved working there. The environment was great. It was a family of people that, not that it really was not perfect at all, but, and the community in the gym, and I worked at 3 of them. I wound up working at 3 of them. One of them I didn't feel it as much, but, I wanted to work there, despite there were a couple of troubles. But I wanted to be there, and I noticed it among the membership too, the people that came in. It was a very tight community, and I found that to be very important with going to the gym. I found that it was not, I don't know if it's so much important as it was beneficial. I wanted to be there, and I wanted to work out. And one of the fitness manager at the time, he said something very good was, generally, I would go to, I still to this day, I do the treadmill. I get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock, whatever it is, sometimes 5:30. And he said I would go to the one. I lived 4 miles from the one that I worked at, but there was one a mile away in the town that I lived in. And I would work out in that one. I just kind of, headphones in. I'm not a morning person, do the treadmill, and and kind of keep to myself. And he said, I'm going to give you a little tip that could come, what something you do can come against you. I don't know if it is, but it can is because you work out at the one in Long Beach. We've spoken there, seen you there, and because you work out at the one you work at. And people will see you, and they know you lost all this weight, and they'll start to come to you a little bit. So to have that, and especially with, and you probably have experienced this as a physical therapist, and I know with training we try to avoid it, but might be some physical contact. So you have to feel comfortable with the person you're with. And I will say, listen, and when I would do the free training sessions with people, the first day, you sign up at the gym, you get a half hour. And I would always take people to this one thing and I'd say, listen, I'm showing you this because it's the assisted dip and pull up.
Mm-hmm.
You put your knees on the pad. And
yeah.
I say, because this is the kind of thing, if you fall off it, you could hurt yourself. I'm going to show you And I would say, listen, but I'm going to be standing right behind you. Let me know if that makes you uncomfortable. And there have been people that said, yeah. I say, but the point is, I'm going to be holding on to the bars right behind you. So if you fall back, I go down. You don't fall, I do. And there were times that I'm not really comfortable with it, and it happens. But to show the people the things they wouldn't normally do.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Because and that's a point that I try to do my best with some of these presentations that we kind of said a couple times is show people or give people what they don't know or they wouldn't find themselves.
yeah.
Right, like you said about the exercise, the guy sitting you down saying like, you gave me the workout, you give yourself. I want like,
Yeah.
so the idea being that a lot of this is, okay, I'm trying to present to a large group of people, but I also need to make sure that there are definite parts in this that people will not know. And so we talked about the whole aspect of you need to move more. Sure, if you really want to sum up my entire mission is, of course it is to get people to move more. But we said knowledge isn't useful that way. People know they need to move more. They're still not doing it. So it doesn't do you any good to know you need to move more. We now need to get you to do something about it. And so, yeah, showing people something new. That's sometimes my worry, though, is that people think, oh, if I just do this one different thing, it's going to fix all my problems. And well, no, but let's start with something. Let's try the dip and the pull-up assisted. You haven't done this before ever. I'll show you some other things, but let's try this first. Let's try something different.
I think I'm on my side. I'm running out of steam a little bit.
I mean, that's fine by me. I have to hop off to another
Okay.
meeting soon. So
So, I did want to ask. I was writing a little bit. Do you have any websites? Like I wrote down Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and website. So you can do that one at a time if you want. Like you have an Instagram site.
sure. Instagram. This is a bit long, but it's love to move, move to love. Is the long version of it. The website is just the first letters of that. It's ltmmtl.com.
Okay. So that's your website. Also,
Yep.
Facebook.
Just Stefan Zavalin, Facebook. Just me. I'm not big on Facebook personally. There's just so many platforms that I had to pick and choose.
Keep up either. Can't keep up. And I took a note for myself today. Talking to somebody, I'm like, I can't remember if I posted onto my website and this, which ones I got, and I'm like, I just put them in a list. Boom, boom, boom. Here's the next video. Boom, boom, boom. And you did the website. You did yeah. Okay, that looks. Is there any? I think. Why do I think we missed one?
There's YouTube, and YouTube is just love to move on YouTube.
Okay.
Yep, that's all it is.
All right. I'm glad you messaged on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I'm happy we got to connect. This was really fun.
Let me stop recording. I'm going to stop.
Okay.